In many places all over the world there are Lithuanian districts and Lithuanian villages, but here in Quebec, Canada, there are actually Lithuanian lakes. For example, one lake is named the Lithuanian Dainava, and here we are around Lake Silver, which was inhabited by many Lithuanian people, and there is even a monument of columns of Gediminas here, which is a Lithuanian patriotic symbol. So how did these Lithuanian lakes came to being?
Well, at the beginning, the Lithuanians couldn't go too far away from Montreal, so they had those, what they called gegužines, and those gegužines used to take place hopefully by a river or by a lake. So the early gegužines were in Ville-la-Salle by the St. Lawrence River. Later on, some Lithuanians had places a little bit in the countryside, so they went a little further, like place was they called Q Lithuanians Palanga. It was just a little very small lake, and then there's some other Lithuanians a little further. There was a Lake Dainava. But in the early or late 50s and early 60s, the government of Quebec wanted to develop some countryside area, so they were giving lots, not giving, but offering lots for very low prices, like $300 an acre, if the occupant would build a minimum of $2,000 worth of a country home or a summer home. And the word got around through Pranas Rudinskas, who was the director of the Lithuanian Litas bank, and he let it be known to the Lithuanian community this was a possibility. So there was a big rush of the Lithuanians who could afford to go and to have a lot, and that's how they got to Lac Silver in droves. And I would say there was up to 30 families. Not all of them did build a summer house, but at least 20 or more of the Lithuanian families built their summer houses there. And that's how the Lac Silver was before called Lac Clair, meaning a very clear water, because it was a very clean lake. It used to be a private fishing domain. So the Lithuanian got established starting in the early 60s, go there, and at the same time, well, the Lithuanian scout camps, who was always growing in size, they were looking for a scout place, a summer place for the scout camp. And so at the same time, there was a possibility of acquiring or renting a lot with an adjacent lakefront lot for summer camps for the Lithuanian scouts. And that's how the Baltia Scout Camp was created in the early 60s, and it lasted for a good 30 years until at the end there was not enough scouts or subsidizing to keep the scout camp alive, and the last scout camp took place in 1997. So that's about the story of Lac Silver and the Lithuanians. So is that...
So how many Lithuanians once lived around here, or actually not lived, as I understand? Yeah, they would come here only in summers, like
summer camp, yeah, because the houses were 3 seasons. They was not winterized, so they only came in the early spring and until the autumn. Very few came there in the winter, but with time they started to winterize it, and then some of them became full-time residents, like my friends Viktoras Rimas Rudinskas is an example, but there's a few others that are semi-permanent or permanent there residents.
And there is another lake called Dainava after Dzūkija, a region in Lithuania. Mm-hmm. So how did Lithuanians manage to name it this way? And also, actually, your own home is at a street called Neris, which is named after a river of Lithuania. So how did you manage to name it this way?
Well, my family, Bulota family, we are 4 brothers and a sister. With the encouragement of my mother, we decided to create an investment company into buying properties, land, and even duplexes, and we decided to find a name for our company, and we decided to call it Investment Neris. And so we bought some lots and properties and made some development, and we developed this little street. First, it was a bigger street, but we were not quick enough to decide a name for the street once we developed it, and so the city called it Carolus Laurier. But when we made an extension to the street, we decided maybe we can tell the city hall or suggest that they give it a name called Neris. So they did look into it, and they call it Chemin de la Neris, which means the road along the Neris, like following the Neris River, de la Neris, which means following the Neris. And that's how we got the name of Neris for our little short street where me and my brother are the only two residents.
And so Lake Dainava, which is actually not as big as Lake Silver, but still it has many houses around it, and road named Dainava as well. So who were the Lithuanians, and how did they manage to name it that way?
There was, I'd say, maybe 7 or 8, maybe more Lithuanians that, again, by word of mouth, knew that there was a possibility of acquiring lots around this little lake. And again, so there was the Lapine, there was I'm trying to remember some of the other people that were there. So they were enough of them to suggest, and the lake had no name before, and it was actually, the lake was increased in size by building a little dam, which increased the size of the lake, because it was not really a lake before, it was just more like a pond. And by building a little dam on the brook there, it increased the size of the lake, and they called it Dainava. And the scout camp took place there by that Lake Dainava for a few years that I participated myself there. So that's how the name Dainava.
And so Lake Silver here never received a Lithuanian name, but as I understand, like it was the largest of these Lithuanian lakes by the number of Lithuanian people who lived here, yes?
Yeah, but Lake Silver is, compared to Lake Dainava, it's like 10 times or even more bigger than Dainava. There's I don't know, maybe like close to 200 lots around the lake. So 30 Lithuanians in 200 lots, it was not enough to influence a Lithuanian name.
Yeah, it took like an hour maybe for us to use a motorboat to sail all around this Lake Silver. And so there were about 30 Lithuanians, and how many there are now?
Oh, maybe I'd say no more than 10. Well, some of them are descendants of Lithuanians, and you maybe don't even know the names. Like, I'll give you an example. My sister-in-law, she's a Lithuanian, but she's married to a fellow by the name of Audi. So the name is by Audi. So you wouldn't know it was my parents-in-law that used to be there, and still their daughter is there. So I count her as a Lithuanian, but if you look in the statistics, she probably wouldn't show up as a Lithuanian resident.
Yeah, well, two things we noticed when sailing around the lake by boat. One thing is Lithuanian flag, so somebody still actually flies a Lithuanian flag there. And another one, a more permanent thing, is this monument of the columns of Gediminas, which rises on a hill above the lake. So who built it and when?
Well, the Gedimino Vartai, right up on the high cliffs of the shore of the lake, was a project by the Lithuanian scouts at the time, and the first Gedimino Vartai they built was very simple, out of birch and tied up with a rope, etc. But with time, some people decided to upkeep it or improve it, and so it's still standing now. And now we have a fellow by the name of Sebastianas Tashinskas, who's a good friend of whose parents were a good friend of us. He's put it upon himself to upkeep and every so often give it a coat of new paint and see if it still can stand for a while longer.
Indeed, and as I understand, you can hike to the columns of Gediminas, but it takes about 1 hour or so to one side. Yeah,
it's not an easy trail. You have to, I'd say, about 1 hour. Right now, I probably would not be in good enough shape to make the trek because it's you have to go up in narrow passages and climb some rocks to reach it. So it's not an easy trail. Yes, it takes, I would say, about an hour to get there and another hour to get back.
Yeah. So, but as I know, there are lots of Lithuanian hikers in Canada. There's even like a Lithuanian hiker club and so on. So maybe if somebody of those who are watching would want a Lithuanian hike in Canada, so they want to the columns of Gediminas here at Lake Sylvaire, it's probably a good idea. And like all the time we are recording this, we are actually going around Lake Sylvaire, yes?
Yes.
Yeah, so
right now we're along the shore of Lac Huaro.
Oh, so yeah, so we already passed to the second lake, but actually we didn't drove all the distance around Lake Sylvaire. There isn't even a road all around it, so it's pretty big indeed. And all the sites, such as this monument, such as this column of Gediminas monument, and Lithuanian churches in Montreal, and Lithuanian named streets, and Lithuanian named lakes here in Canada, all of these we have marked at Destination Lithuanian America map of Lithuanian American heritage sites, accessible for all at map.lithuania.com. So if you are interested in visiting them, I invite you to reach out to the map and see for yourself. And if you are interested in more interviews such as this one, I suggest following this YouTube channel.